Awesome. Perfect. Okay. Well, thanks, Connie. I am super, super, super excited. I've just taken a look at the participants. We have tons of people here. It's making me a little bit nervous at first. So I am digging deep into my brave right now, when we're doing this and it's being recorded for everybody and anybody to see. So anyhow, thank you all for being here. I'm super pumped for this challenge, for 5 day, be a new parent. Don't we all want to be a new parent in 5 days? Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. So I'm going to share a little bit about my parenting journey, and I'm going to share a little bit about a challenge that maybe I'm having right now where I have to lean into being brave with my kids, as well as some of the skills that I dig deep in. And I'm going to then put a challenge out to you, because if we want to be a new parent in 5 days, it doesn't just come with showing up here, for half an hour. It comes with doing a little bit of practice, which I'm a huge believer in. It's the only way to get better at things is by practicing. So I'm a mama to 3 kiddos. I have a 14-year-old son, I have an 11-year-old daughter, and I have an 8-year-old son. So my parenting journey has been, 14 and a half-ish years now. And it hasn't come without challenge, for sure. And so I think the very first part of me needing to be brave as a parent started, when I was pregnant. My husband was in the Australian military and we lived in Canberra. So if anybody's familiar with Australia, and he got a transfer from Canberra to Melbourne when I was 34 weeks pregnant. And that was my first journey of trying to be brave as a parent, because I had one friend in Melbourne. I had no family. All my family is in Canada, and we were moving to a new city. I was having a baby in just a couple of weeks' time. I had no doctor. I had no house. And I was going to be bringing this little human into the world. And so that was, I feel like, my first step of, oh my gosh, this is going to be quite a journey, because I really need to believe in myself and my partner that we can do this. And what skills do we have and what tools do we have to be these parents to this little human? And all my family was in Canada. So that was my very first step of trying to understand what being a parent was. And for every single one of you, because you're all here because you have kids, they don't come home with a manual. We have no freaking idea what we're doing, right? Are they hungry? Have they pooped too much? Have they pooped not enough? All of these things, right, that come up. And then I have baby number 2, and a little girl, and she was totally different than my son was to parent. And then I have baby number 3 across in Canada, where now I'm like, I got this. I know what I'm doing. When I was at the hospital, the doctors and the nurses were treating me like I was a first-time mom, because they had no medical records for me, because I'd had all my babies in Australia. And so that was quite an interesting journey as well, to really speak up and use my voice and be brave and tell them what I needed and what I had to experience with and things like that with a couple of babies. So that was just the very beginning of the journey. And then along the way, there's been so many other things that I've needed to be brave with. First day of school. That feels big. My daughter, who struggled with major, major anxiety when we hit grade 3, not wanting to go to school, feeling sick, pulling chunks of her hair out, talking about self-harming. I mean, it was huge, guys. And that was scary. And I was like, I'm a counselor, I'm a social worker, I've got these skills, I talk to other parents about this, but I'm terrified and I don't know what to do. And how do I deal with this? Because it's different, because there's so much emotion attached, right? We can all give other people, our friends, our colleagues, thoughts and advice on how to do things. But when we have emotion attached to it, it makes it harder, and it makes it more challenging, and it makes it scary, because maybe we don't have the skills or the tools. We get stuck inside of our boxes thinking we know what to do, and we don't sometimes. And my bravery right now And I wrote a couple of notes for myself because I have a couple of big things, 3 things actually, that I need to be brave about. So right now, my oldest just got his learner's permit. So I was out driving with him last night, and that was exciting, emotional for me because I don't know, 13, like teenage years, like whatever, I'm okay. Like 13, no problem, but 14 was so overwhelming. Like I'll like I totally admit it. I had a good cry. I was like, oh my gosh, 14, you're so big. And so bravery with him is starting to come with, I need to give him a little bit more space to grow. And I need to be in a place to trust him because I believe as a parent, I've given him some tools, I've given him some strategies. We've had lots of good conversations, hard conversations. Um, but if I don't start trusting him a little bit at 14 with his phone, we just got him data last week. um, Teaching him about apps, teaching him about driving, teaching him about, he's starting to make plans to go to parties with his friends. And I know most of them, but talking about drugs and talking about making safe and healthy choices, that feels really scary for me. And part of what feels so incredibly scary for me about that is I have lived in the world of crisis and complex families for the 28 years that I have been working as a professional. I've worked in maximum security prisons. I've worked in child welfare and child protective services. I've worked in addiction and homelessness, domestic violence. I've worked with teenagers. I've worked with adults. And I know just a little bit more about what goes on in the world because I've seen so many of the dark sides of it compared to many of my friends or my family members. And it terrifies me to know what really goes on and how kids and youth are so open and honest with me when they come from these amazing families, when they're sitting in my office. And I know 100% my kids lie to me a little bit. They hide stuff from me. That is normal. That's normal. We don't tell our parents everything. Even now, as an adult, I don't tell my parents everything, right? Think back when you were a teen. So I need to put myself in the place of being brave to trust him in not just driving a car with me, but all those other things that are so scary because he can be led down a path, but I need to trust. And then with my daughter, oh, wow. Goodness. Will slam doors. She's so much more emotional than my son is. And I need to be really mindful that she has struggled with like anxiety, as I've talked about, but she also is very, it might sound strange, but she's very emotionally mature. Like, honestly, I swear she's more emotionally mature than my son is at 14. She picks up on people's emotions. She can read people. And I think this is why she struggles with anxiety at times because she's so perceptive, which is also scary for me because she feeds into perfectionism. If things are not 100% perfect, she will rip it all up. She will melt down on the floor. She will give me attitude. And I just want to like yell or like shake her or something and be like, it's perfect, you don't have to redo it. But it's not in her mind. And this is where I have to sit back and think her perception is her reality. And how do I be brave as a parent, as her mom, to step into how she's feeling in this moment and get behind that anxiety and that perfectionism? I call it coming in the back door. How do I come in the back door to understand what's going on for her and talk her through where she's feeling challenged and where she's struggling, and not lose my poop? Because sometimes we're up to like 10 or 11 at night, and she's really upset that her work isn't perfect. And she's in grade 7 now. So this is a challenge, guys, that we've been having for not just 1 year or 2 years, right? And I think, you know, for her, this is going to be a whole life journey with her. I struggled with anxiety. You know, something will pop up even for me right now. Like yesterday, there was something that popped up and I was feeling super hyper anxious about it, which I know that fed into her doing her homework last night and her practice stuff that she was doing for school. And it was, and I had to really be brave and lean into, I need to go for a bit of a walk. I need to come in the back door and think about what she needs to be brave, because this is tough. And my bravery with her looks really different than my bravery with my 14-year-old right now, because they need different things from me. And as parents, that's something else that I've really learned, that just because something works for one does not mean, and probably won't, work for number 2 or number 3 or a boy versus a girl. There are some of the basic rules that are the same. There are some of the boundaries and expectations that are the same, but my parenting is not the same. And then my little guy, he's 8, and how I need to be brave with him. Well, he has an older brother and older sister, and he thinks that he should have the same things set for him. He should get to walk to school on his own. No, you're in grade 3. You're not walking by yourself. And that's me being fearful. There might be other parents that are here and being like, of course, my children have walked to school since grade 3. That's ridiculous. That is my own fear of things I've seen and experienced in the world, with work. And even personally, like I had some experiences when I was younger that were really terrifying, that follow me into my parenting. So every morning I will walk around the behind the school so he can go in by himself, because it's embarrassing having me there, he says. But I need to be brave to even start like letting him do that little bit. And that fear for me comes from when I was in probably grade 3 or grade 4, and I was followed home from school by some random guy. And he tried to pick me up and kidnap me. And we had to go to the police station, and we had to make a report, and we had to do all of these really scary things. And then the police were doing surveillance all around the blocks, and I had to walk home by myself for a week to see if he came around again. And guys, stuff that's happened in our past shows up in our parenting. And until my kids started to want to walk to school or ride their bikes to school, it took, like, you know, they were probably 7 or 8, my oldest, when I started having these like hyper anxious feelings and not trusting them to walk to school. And I had to be brave, because it's my own fear. It was my own trauma. It's my own stuff that I'm bringing in to my kids, that I am mirroring for them, that are making them frightened, that are making them anxious. So to be brave, I really needed to lean into, this is about me. And so now with my youngest, because he's my youngest, I'm a little bit less anxious about it, but I still need to be brave, because it's scary for me, really scary. And some of you might understand that, and some of you might think I'm being crazy, but I feel it in my body. Some of you, when you're having some, reactions, physiological reactions, it's telling you something about what's scary or big, or, that anxious piece of it. So a tool or a skill that I want to bring to you today in your bravery is, I want you to consider each of your kids individually. What is something that brings up that physiological reaction? That's like sort of like that spidey sense, that intuition that's like not feeling right, not sitting right, like something's happening in there that's not feeling quite right with those kiddos. And how can you build a connection with your kids around that? So for me, it was talking to my kids about why I was so scared about them walking to school, what happened to me when I was little, and why my reactions were so big around that, and how they could help me be brave around these things. And I still have these conversations all the time, like with my oldest driving and going to parties. Like, why does that make me feel anxious? And why is that bringing something up in me? So having those open conversations. So I want you to think about, how can you have an open conversation with your kids about something that feels big and scary for you that you might be seeing them doing? And that's also going to be your practice, is having that conversation, not just thinking about it, not just thinking about what is deep inside me. What's that spidey sense? What's that intuition that's not sitting quite right with, oldest, middle, youngest, 3, 4, 5, however many kiddos you have, and then putting it into action. Having a conversation with them about what makes you feel scared and not so brave about this situation, and how can they help you become brave through conversations. So that is a little bit on my brave parenting journey, and a little bit about my kiddos and me. Yeah.
That's great, Shelly. No, thanks for that. And thank you for being real. That's one thing I really wish that counselors would have been with me. And I understand that there's this professional relationship and there's etiquette, professionalism. But this is what I love about Shelly, because she shares from her expertise, but she also shares because she's a mom. And I loved the variety of how you're feeling towards each child and the difference. That's powerful, because sometimes, we forget that some of us are in real crisis and we're like, oh, if only walking to school was the only issue. But there's some people who are watching and in our challenge who are like, that is where I am at. And so when in this parenting journey, it's so important to realize that we are all on a very unique journey. And I loved how you brought up that this was your own trauma coming up. And to what is trauma to one is not to another. Your experiences are your experiences. And you just gave us all permission to feel and to embrace those things, no matter how kind of small it might seem. It's big for us. And so thank you so much, Shelly, for being here. You're welcome to stick around, but
I
Shelly,
am.
okay,
I'm going to stick
awesome.
around. So if there's any questions, or I don't have to be anywhere for a while. So I'm going to hang out if anybody wants to. Even they can send me, I think probably a private question if they need to, right?
Yeah, so if you go on the chat beside everyone,
I'm there.
yeah, all you have to do is go to the word to, where the blue is, and you just click Shelly, and you could send her private messages right now. Guys, when do you ever get access to a professional counselor for free? So I would love for you to take advantage of this. Now, one thing I want to protect Shelly. I want to protect her time. We're only going till 11, and she may not be able to solve all of your problems through a chat box, okay? So I promise that she will do her best to answer something at some point this week even. We're all in that group. We're all in the Facebook group. So at any time you want to post a challenge, something you're going through, one of the things that I really value is safe community. And I guard that with my life. So just saying right off the bat, right from the beginning of the week, I do want to say that if you need a safe place, please consider our group a safe place. Now, safety takes intention. So what I will be doing as the gatekeeper, if I could use that term, of the group, is that if I notice that anyone is being treated or being devalued, or their experiences are being kind of picked on, I will not tolerate that. I'm just putting out there. I don't feel that will be a problem, but I just want to let you know that your privacy and your psychological safety is my utmost concern. Creating a safe place, because one of the things that I've realized with parents and with myself is that there's not a whole lot of places where we can get real. And there's not a lot of places where we can share the deep struggles. I mean, when I was going through stuff with our son, saying like, hey, my son was threatening to hurt himself and us with knives. That's not good grocery store lineup conversation. Who do you share that with? And sometimes I would share it and I realized that was definitely the wrong person. Don't ever share that again. And so I want to say that you are safe here. Now, trust has to be earned. I don't believe that trust just happens. And so it might take a while. It might take you till Friday, and that is okay. Your journey this week is your journey. And so please feel very welcome, feel very at ease. Shelly is going to be around. Our counselors are going to be around. We are giving you full access to us for the week. And then I promise you, we're not going to end the journey here. We do have other things in store. And so Shelly has given us a task. She's given us a task to look up what is underneath our kids, to be brave and to have a brave conversation with them. And so what does that look like for you? What does it look like to have a brave conversation? It's interesting. I'm in the same place right now. Even though one of the things that I've really learned is that we might have had a crisis 5 years ago. But how many of you know that your kids change and seasons change? And if you have a perfect childhood, a perfect teenage year, and then for some reason your kid becomes an adult and now there are problems, there are challenges. Can I just say that challenges are a part of life? That our goal with our kids is not to fix them out of their mental health concerns, out of their anxiety. We're not trying to fix them. We're not trying to bring them out of depression. That's one of the things, the feedbacks I've got from my book. They're like, I can't relate to you because we are still in the struggle. And I just want to say that we're still in the struggle too, but now we have the tools to deal with it. One of the things that really hit me when we were in the hospital with my son, the psychologist asked me, what does depression show up like for your son? And at this point, when he's 8, he doesn't know how to manage his emotions. He doesn't know how to verbally express some of the deep things going on. And so if anyone's struggling, your child is struggling with aggression, oftentimes they don't know how to express. And so out comes the aggression. And so he would be aggressive and throw things and swear and wreck our house. And she asked me, well, what do you do when your son throws these fits of rage? I said, well, send him to his room. And I tell him, you can't come out until you're going to be a good boy. I mean, that's how I was raised. But then she said, oh, no, you never send the hurting away from you. You bring them closer. And I didn't know what that meant. And many of you have heard this story. And I am still leaning into what does it look like to bring now my 14-year-old son closer, because it looks very different than it did when he was 8. When he was 8, he still wanted the hugs. Right now, we are going through another little loop, which I will share maybe later in the week or in the group. But even my other son is 10 years old next week. And he's like Shelly's child. He will not go to school. In fact, this morning, we had such a battle with him to go to school. He was crying. He wouldn't go. He was anxious. And I mean, if anyone else feeling like, yeah, my kid has been anxious to go to school. Anyone else? If that's you, maybe say a little yes so that we, yes, Desiree, yes. Anyone else? Yes. And I think we have to remember that our kids are going through a pandemic. And even school is not the same way it used to be. I mean, they're wearing masks, they're in cohorts. Even homeschooling, which you'll hear from Sally tomorrow, homeschooling is different as well. Everything has changed for these kids. And so for me, the way I normally work is suck it up. We're going to school. Just pull up your bootstraps. And so one of the things that I've been doing is something about what Shelly had mentioned, is really trying to look at what is really happening with my child. What is really going on with my poor little Chris, who can't seem to go to school? And that means stepping back. That means taking a step back and not just looking at the moment, because when we're in the moment, we're not even thinking clear. right? We are not in our prefrontal cortex, which is where we reason. We're in the back of our brain. Our amygdala is like, blah! And we are freaking out because all I could think of this morning was, how do I get you out the door? Because I have work to do. I have responsibilities. I have things, I have people that are needing me at 9 o'clock. What's going on? Like, I'm thinking about all the things that are causing me anxiety now. But I had to take a step back and I had to think, okay, what's going on with him? And one of the things I did this morning was I wake up before my kids wake up because that's the only alone time I get of all day. And I sat down on my couch and I started to journal. I started to journal what is the heart, what is really happening with my kids. And I have a faith, I pray, and I'm not here to tell you what you should or should not believe. That's not what the Brave Parent Institute is about. But for me, that is my first go-to. And what I did this morning was I wrote out a little mantra for my son. And I'd like to read it to you because what I did when he woke up is I read this to him. Because sometimes what we do as parents is we limit our kids through their diagnosis. My little guy has anxiety, but am I going to always lean into that, or am I going to allow that to teach me? But am I always going to be like, well, no, you see, he's anxious. One of the things that I learned with working with youth for 20 years is that youth love to hold on to their diagnosis. I remember being in school assemblies and saying, have you ever thought for a moment that your anxiety does not have to define you? Yes, you have anxiety. Yes, the diagnosis is there. But have you ever thought for a moment that it doesn't have to be your destiny? And I would have youth come up to me after and say, no, you don't get it. I am anxious. Really? So you really want that on you, huh? But it's because we live in a world where we have labeled these kids, which I'm not against because it helps. It gives IPPs. It allows counselors to help us. It allows us to know what is the framework our children are working with. But I do believe in the power of connection, which we're going to talk a lot about, what Shelly talked about, getting what's underneath anxiety. Anxiety is an alarm. Anger is an alarm. These emotions aren't them. There's something that's driving them underneath. What is driving them underneath? And so what I did when I wrote this little mantra for my son is I was thinking about what's underneath his anxiety, not wanting to go to school. Well, his brother right now is stuck and isn't going to school. So he's watching his brother going, why does he get to stay home? Now he's on a whole different journey, and I'll maybe share that a little bit later this week. But that's hard for a 10-year-old. He also doesn't do well with change, and he feels alone. One of the brave conversations, and Shelly, this is a brave conversation I had with my little guy, is I went out with him and we went for a walk, and on walks we're able to talk, and I was saying, like, can you really kind of maybe let me know like what you're really feeling? Because I don't think it's just about school, and I don't think it's just about your brother. What's really going on? And he was able to tell me at 10 years old, after digging for a while, he said, Mom, I just feel alone. I feel alone. I feel like during quarantine, you were always working and I was just kind of hanging out because, right, that's what we were all doing. We were trying to get our work done, and, we were all in the same house. And he goes, I feel like you and Dad cater more to my brother, to Ben. I just feel alone. Now that didn't happen in the first conversation, so I don't want you to take Shelly's assignment here and do it and then be like, well, my kid didn't say anything, because it's hard. Kids don't know how to express, and they need us to walk alongside of them. And that was after a 3-week dig, right? I love that, Shelly. Patience, practice, and persistence. So after listening to him, hearing that he's alone, this is what I wrote for him this morning. I told him, I said, every time you hear the word I, put Chris in that statement. I am deeply loved. I am a gift to those around me. Even when I feel alone, I remember that I am loved. I am chosen and handpicked. I have a purpose and a destiny. And even though I feel anxious at times, I rise above because I choose to believe that I am more than anxious. I am creative. I am compassionate. Sorry. It's kind of fresh because it was just this morning. I am strong. I am held and surrounded by those who love me. I have a bright future, and I can do all things through God who strengthens me. And I spoke that over him this morning. And I really felt like just how our brave mantra, I am brave. I show up when it's hard. I love without walls. I forgive when it hurts. I rise to the storm. That has formed me. That is a mantra that I have been saying over my life for a long time. And now we're passing it on to others who are saying it over their lives. And then I think that what we need to do is we need to speak life with our kids. When we hear where they're coming from, we don't just want to dismiss what they're feeling, because that doesn't help. Oh, well, you shouldn't feel anxious. Notice that I didn't put that in the mantra. He feels anxious, he feels alone, and we acknowledge that. Oh, that must be hard to feel alone. How we hold their thoughts, how we hold what they're going through is so crucial to them feeling understood and feeling held and being willing to open up and be more brave with us, more communicative. They're going to open like a flower, but if we shut them down with, well, I feel anxious too sometimes, but you know what? I just suck it up. Like, it's like, thanks, I'm never going to talk to you again. We don't want to talk to people like that. And so it's so important to hold their emotions, but then to take them by the hand and say, I want to remind you of who you are. Do you know who your child is? Do you know who they are? Do you see the little gifts inside of them, the little pieces of gold? That gold, so powerful for them to yes, you might feel anxious. I wrote another one for my other son about how, he might feel depressed and anxious, but he rises out of ashes. That's what I see in him. And to be reminded of that, who does not want to feel reminded of who we are? And so this week, maybe finding bravery is also about remembering who you are. Who are you? I know that the hardest moments of my life, which many of those moments have happened as a parent, I've discovered more of who I am in those moments than I have when life was great. And I love it when life is great, in fact, but the pursuit of just our kids being happy. I just want my kids to be happy. I just want my family to be okay. I just want everything to be peaceful. I read a great definition of mental illness by Dr. Henry Townsend. He says that the definition of mental illness is demanding that life adapts to me. When I demand that life adapts to what I want it to look like, I'm going to spiral into depression. I'm going to spiral into anxiety. But when I can adapt to what life throws at me, that's called resilience. That's called grit. When life throws something at me, do I feel it? Oh, do I ever? I was crying this morning. I was like, oh, I don't, this is hard. This is hard stuff. But it makes me, I am brave. I am not brave in myself. I'm brave because I keep showing up. And you're brave because you keep showing up. You have what it takes because you haven't quit, and you won't quit because you can't quit. One of the things I taught my son as I was dragging him literally to school by the hand, he was not happy with me. He actually gave me the finger before he went into school. I'm like, well, what do you do with that, right? He was not happy with me. And I said, he kept saying, I can't, Mom, I can't. And I said, I want you to replace those two words, I can't, with this is hard. Don't say I can't, it's hard. This is hard. Because this is hard still. It doesn't go to Tony Robbins and everything is gonna be okay. No, it doesn't do that, because that's as awesome as I love Tony. as much as I love the power of positive thinking, sometimes when you're in those ruts, somebody comes around with their silly positive thinking and you want to slap them in the face because you're like, welcome to reality. Come back down. Get off the third heaven and get in the dirt with me for a minute here. Am I speaking to anybody? Right? So those moments are real. Those emotions are hard. Those things that you're going through are really, truly difficult. But when you say this is hard, it reframes your brain. It reframes you from going, I can't, to actually, this is hard, but I can do hard things. And I would love for you to remember that. This is hard. This is hard, but I can do hard things. And the only reason why I can say, I know how to say this right now, it's like, where did that tool come from? What book did you read, Connie? I didn't read no book. This is coming from the book of life. This is coming from my own grit, rising up out of the ashes and trying to just make it through another day as a parent with kids who struggle with real things. This is hard. But I can do hard things. And guess what? So can you. You can do hard things. Because we as human beings, we're wired. We're literally, our brains are wired to be able to be resilient. Now, experiences and hardships and words, they pull us down. I remember, I have to tell you this story. I have so many wonderful stories of working with youth. And I love working with parents, and I can't wait to have more stories like this with parents. But I'm discovering that adults are harder because we have life experiences that have molded and shaped us. But this particular kid, grade 7 boy, I used to teach, I know you look at me and think, now there's a gangster. I used to teach hip hop in schools. You know, don't you just think, yeah, hey, that's for free, everybody. I take tips. But I remember teaching resilience through hip hop in schools, and there was this one grade 7 boy, and I would always teach in the circle. So it would be a big circle. If you could imagine with me for a moment, a circle where everybody is on the outside, we're all clapping, and one by one, I would invite students to go into the middle of the circle to dance. And my favorite people to do this with was grade 7 and 8s, because at that age, you know, like they're looking around, they don't want to be seen. And this is where my strong conviction about a village came from. So there we are, we're in the circle, and this guy named John comes up to me and he says, please don't make me go in the middle of the circle. And I'm like, I would never make you go in the middle of a circle. You go in if you want to. And John began to tell me a little bit about how he was bullied every single day. He would tell me that on the way to school, he'd get knocked down. He would come to school, he would have hate letters on his locker. He would go to science class and the teachers didn't like him because he didn't know how to pay attention. And he said to me, he's like, please, like, I just want to remain hidden. I'm like, that's cool. So there we are in the circle. And I can't explain to you what happened, okay? But the circle, the outside of the circle had such a vibe to it. It had an energy to it. People were feeling supported. One by one, people are going into the middle of the circle. We had kids saying, I have social anxiety. I'm like, I don't know about you, but somebody with social anxiety does not go into the middle of a circle. Why did they go in there? Because the vibe on the outside of the circle was electric. It was electric. It was supportive. It was non-judgmental. It was so positive. And then all of a sudden, in comes John in the middle of the circle, and he's flailing his arms everywhere. It was the worst dance I've ever seen in my life. It was not good, but everyone went wild with cheering and screaming because they knew that this was challenging for this boy. And afterwards, I went up to John and I said, John, what happened? You said, don't call me out. And he's like, I don't know. I just felt so free. And this, guys, this was 8 years ago. This happened. And I'm thinking, I just felt so free. Isn't this what you want? And isn't this just what your kids want? I just want to feel so free. And so there's a couple of ways I want to create that, because it has to be created. It's not going to just happen. This is something that I'm good at. I'm not a parenting expert. I have a story. My story has opened up the opportunity. My vulnerability has opened up the opportunity for other people to come in. And that's why I bring in people like Shelly. I'm like, Shelly, I'm not a parenting expert. You're the expert. So we bring in the experts, we bring in the coaches, and we form a support system. But where I'm good at, what my little part is to play, is I am excellent at creating what seems impossible. That is my little expertise. I wish I could get a degree in that, but I can't. What I'm good at is creating. It has to be created. And this is how we're going to create it this week. When you post on the wall your homework, which we're going to announce in just a second, I want everybody to rally. I want you to pretend that we are in a big circle. And when someone posts something on our group this week, you don't know. If you might think that was kind of like really vague and didn't have a lot of detail to it, you don't know. Maybe that was so courageous for someone to post. Some of you have posted lives. I know some of you. Shelly knows you. We see you. And I'm thinking, I can't believe that person went live. Like, wow. So there's levels to bravery here. Level 1, post a text. Level 2, take it up a notch, post a video or a live. But when you do, the secret to resilience is in belonging. The secret to resilience and people rising to their bravery is when you feel surrounded. Tribe creates bravery. Some of you even posted today already. You're like, oh, I wasn't really going to post, but then I saw other people introducing themselves and I decided to post. You know what that is? That is scientific. That is social contagion, my friends. If nobody posted, nobody would. But all it takes is 1 or 2 people to stand up and say, this is how I'm being brave this week. And you don't know what kind of inspiration that's going to pour on to other people. It's going to ignite others. And you know what? It might encourage someone who's in their corner, who would never post a thing, who's just going to stay silent the whole week. What you post about your bravery, that could be the one thing that inspires somebody this week. So do you see how this goes way beyond have a new kid by Friday? Here's your top 3 tools to, manage your children's anxiety. Do you want to know why we still have a mental health crisis? It's because parenting is not a strategy of tools and skills. Parenting is a relationship. And so many of us don't even know how to come alive ourselves. We haven't been seen. We haven't been supported. And so how do we know how to pass that on to our kids? So couple of things. I want you to feel it this week from us, from the tribe. If you're one of these 27 in the webinar right now or listening later, you're a part of the tribe. So this is you. This is not the person next to you. This is you. You are a valuable member of our village this week. So I want you to show up. I want you to be brave so that others can be brave too. And when you are, we've got you. We promise we've got you, okay? So that's the first thing. Number 2, Shelly gave us a very specific task of what to do with our bravery, is start a conversation. Now, maybe your child will be like mine and have no idea. Just start the conversation, or even take one step back and just watch them and see if you can see what is going on underneath my child. Okay? That's your task for today or this week. Think about that. What I want you to post in the group is, how are you going to be brave this week? That's what I want to hear from you, whether you post it in a text form, whether you post it as a video. How do you need to show up brave this week? Because my friends, it's time for you to come alive. It's time for what's dead inside of you to rise again. It's time for things that you didn't even know were in there to come and just bubble up and find life again. I am so excited. Are you excited? I want to speak this over you before we go. I am brave. I show up when it's hard. I love without walls. I forgive when it hurts. And I promise you're going to rise through the storm. We'll see you tomorrow again, 10 a.m. Have a great day, everyone.